All right, was going to go there. So let's kind of follow up on that particular point. What needs to happen for this team to kind of shake itself out of that habit of, the first 20 minutes have been very poor the last several weeks. And, it's just that notion of playing with fire. You keep doing that, you're bound to get burned. How does this coaching staff guard against that? Is there something that USC needs to do early, offense and defense, to shake things up, to try and land the first punch, or at least, to stay in it against Oregon's offense? Like Ethan, I'm thinking on defense, load the box, dare Dante Moore to throw down the field, take away the run. Because like Oregon was able to run, even though Dante Moore wasn't throwing the ball well against Iowa, he finished with something like 113 yards passing, and Oregon was running consistently. It didn't lead to a dynamic passing game for Oregon. So I think on defense, loading the box, and then on offense, I think you want to get Makai Lemon a chance to make a splash play early. He's flying high coming off that epic Iowa game. I think hitting Oregon with a jab would really quiet the Autzen crowd. But your thoughts on what USC needs to do to solve this puzzle of the first 20 minutes? Didn't get off to a good start at Illinois, as well as Nebraska, Northwestern, Iowa. Like, we've seen this a lot. How does this coaching staff solve this particular puzzle?
Yeah, so just want to give a quick shout out to Bob Springer. He's on the Royal Princess, and he's still joining us tonight for the Voice of College Football. So thanks, Bob, for being here and making us part of your night. Anyways, back to Oregon. I think that, and it's interesting because I think that there's kind of two different schools of thought for if USC wins the coin toss. I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with the coin toss. I think that, USC being a stronger team on the offensive side of the ball, you would think like, if USC wins the toss, they should, elect to receive. And that way, they can kind of set the tone by getting off to a quick 7-0 start or something like that. I'd actually like to see them do the opposite if they win the toss. I think that they should defer and put the defense on the field first, because of how the last few weeks have gone, because it's taken them a little bit longer to get going, because, they've been a second half team. I think that that's twofold. I think that allows you to have the possession coming out of this, coming out of the locker room in the second half in your back pocket, just in case things go similarly as they have the last couple of weeks. But I think, you don't frame it like that to your team. You frame it as, hey, we're confident in our defense. We're going to put our defense on the field first, and they're going to set the tone for us. They're going to send the message. We're going to get them, kind of into the groove earlier. And just, just kind of get them firing on all cylinders, so that, that confidence can get going very, very early. So it's a bit unconventional, but I'd kind of like to see them do that.
I just want to jump in quickly. Lincoln Riley usually likes taking the ball, does he not?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it's a bit unconventional. But I'd like to see them do that potentially. And then I think like what you said about loading the box, I agree. Dante Moore is really inconsistent. And, he's got a lot of talent, but I don't think he's better than Jaden Mayava in general. And I also think he's really inconsistent. Like you said, it wasn't great against Iowa. 13-21 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. So he has bad games. His highs are very high, but his lows have been lower than Mayava. And he doesn't play as consistently as Mayava either. So, I think force him to beat you. And you know what? Like, if you load the box early and you try to slow down Oregon because they rush for they have 3 guys who've rushed for over 400 yards this year, and they average 6 yards a carry. Like, if you try to slow down the run game and that works, but then Dante Moore beats you and, starts out by throwing a couple long touchdowns, then you adjust. But I think you make him do that because he is less likely to be on, I think, than Oregon's running game, which has been pretty dominant all year long. And they are so deep that if you kind of contain one of their running backs, they'll just go to another one. They'll just go to another one. So I think making Oregon beat you in the pass on defense is really smart. And then on offense, yeah, I mean, it's it's, just hitting him with your best punch, getting Jaden Mayava really comfortable really early. I think, getting Makai Lemon comfortable in a game against a big opponent is really important. Like you said, he was, kind of USC's X factor in this last game against Iowa. You don't want what happened against Notre Dame and what happened against Nebraska to happen in this game. Like, you want Makai Lemon to be really firing on all cylinders, rack up a bunch of catches. And I think also that brings the benefit of figuring out early, are you going to go to Makai Lemon? Are you going to be able to do that? Is he kind of dissecting this Oregon defense, which is the number one pass defense in the country, by the way? Or is Oregon's defense really putting a lot of attention on Makai Lemon? Because that could open up a lot for Jacoby Lane, especially because Oregon, if Oregon is really paying a lot of attention to Makai in the slot, that probably means that both of their high safeties, if they're playing a 2 high safety look, are going to be paying a lot of attention to Makai. So it opens up a lot of one-on-ones for Jacoby Lane. And then, I think something I saw on Max Brown, the former USC quarterback, his YouTube channel today, is that the one route that Oregon really struggles to cover is routes that, go to the outside. So they start in and then they go out towards the sideline. So especially if Makai is getting a lot of attention in the slot, the safety's getting pulled towards him, then Jacoby Lane can go one-on-one and go to the outside, and that'll be really successful for USC. So I just think feeling that out will be really important. But obviously, just like any game in the Big Ten, you got to establish the run too. So it's got to be balanced like it has been all year. But yeah, there's a lot to feel out, I think, early. And so those are kind of the strategies I want to see USC employ when they start the game.
I absolutely agree with everything you guys are saying. I think just really trying to make Dante more uncomfortable, and maybe he just struggles early, I think it will really just help USC, especially with your idea, Ethan, of USC deferring and kicking off to start the game. And I've always been of the mindset, I don't care whether your offensive coach, defense, your offense is leading, defense is better. I've always been, you want to kick that ball off to start the game if you win that toss. I've just looked at it as, especially going into the second half, you want to have that opening kickoff there to start out strong and maybe possibly get one extra possession in. So I hope they kick off for that reason, but I think just making Dante more uncomfortable. And then obviously, like you said, Ethan, offensively getting Mayava comfortable and letting Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane get their reps and really just, dominate there. But then also, like you said, King Miller needs to get his runs in, especially if Wayman Jordan is out, which is seeming likely. But like you said earlier in the show, if Lincoln Riley is trying to be all sneaky with how he's managing Jordan to keep Oregon off guard, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on Jordan during warmups. Does he end up putting his pads on? Does he run out with the team? What's he doing in warmups? So it's going to be very interesting to monitor Jordan as well, especially in the slight chance that he is back, because that is a huge boost to USC's run game, which USC will definitely need to utilize regardless of whether or not he is available.
All right, so let's turn to play selection and the game plan on offense. King Miller's been great, no question about it. But USC's running game, with the injuries on the offensive line, with the injuries to the running back room, this running game has not been in a position to max out. And against Iowa, it was mostly Mayava throwing to Makai Lemon, and Makai Lemon making a Biletnikoff Award level display in the Coliseum. And part of the Makai Lemon storyline is that Ethan referenced the Notre Dame and Nebraska games. Well-schooled defenses, but also those games were on the road. So we need to see Makai Lemon away from the Coliseum play like an alpha, play like a big dog, like that, and if you want the Biletnikoff Award, you need to go into Autzen and you need to make a statement if you're Makai Lemon. So obviously the personal awards matter less than team success, but personal excellence is going to feed into team success for Makai Lemon. But my larger point is, and once again, we get into this situation where, the USC fan base, I think in their heart of hearts, would want to run the ball first and foremost with King Miller. But I think this might be a throw game. And, Oregon has, a highly rated secondary. But, I think you have to hit Oregon in that secondary. You're going to have to make big plays. You're going to have to go into the belly of the beast. This is a big boy challenge. I think the pass, we tend to think of the running game as like the test of manhood, but I think in this game, the passing game is the test of manhood. Your two electric playmakers, Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, they're receivers. They both need to be great. They both need to be at their best. We can't have the Jacoby Lane drop passes that we saw against Notre Dame and Mekhi Lemon. He just, if you are a top 10 NFL draft pick, you got to school your man. You got to win your battles. You got to go click clack and get the job done. So, to me, the test of manhood is not brute strength up front. It's more of throw it, and our dudes are faster. Our dudes are going to get the 50-50 balls. Our dudes are going to, be, they're going to win plays in the air. Because even when USC's running game has not been amazing, the pass protection has been very consistent. That's part of the success story of this offensive line under Zach Hansen. So, Ethan, I know that the USC, the school that brought us student body right, most fans want to run the damn ball, but I think you have to establish the downfield pass in this game.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. I think that you talked about a test of manhood, right? And the manhood is, can you be the man on the road? Like, can you be the same big dog that you look like in the Coliseum on the road? And it's equal fold for Mekhi Lemon as it is for Jaden Maiava. I was really surprised to see kind of the discrepancy in Maiava's stats, because he played pretty well in his first two road games against Purdue and against Illinois, barring that one interception and then that one bad drive against the Illini. But 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions at home, 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the road. So he's a different guy. He has a couple of games where he hasn't thrown for a single touchdown on the road. He's thrown an interception in every road game except for Purdue. So, it's a little bit different. And we talked about last year, obviously Maiava's biggest weakness was he would get into his own head because he had a lot of talent. But he would kind of panic a little bit, and then he'd go through these really rough stretches where he threw like interceptions on back-to-back drives and stuff like that. So I think, and then I think that kind of showed up against Nebraska, which was his worst game this year, which was that he never kind of got out of this rut, at least throwing the ball. He impacted the game running the ball, ended up helping USC win that way. But never really kind of got out of his own head, got out of the rut, throwing the ball, save for a couple of throws there at the end. Here and there. But yeah, I think that'll be really important. You want to see, these guys be able to take that game up to Oregon and not just, kind of take a step back like they've done in road games similarly. So yeah, that's really important. One note I'd make about the run game is it felt like in this last game against Iowa, we saw Brian Jackson get back to the back that we kind of thought he was going to be this year, which, with the injuries, you would think that they would still be giving him more carries. Like they're still not giving him a lot of carries, but his role as the number 3 back coming into the year was supposed to be they give him the ball near the goal line and he powers it into the end zone after, Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders get them down the field. So that to me suggests that he's probably closer to full health. And also, that's kind of a role that USC could use him in this game, probably not only near the end zone, but on those, 3rd and short, potential 4th and short situations, which I'd feel a lot more confident handing the ball to Brian Jackson on 4th and 1 than throwing a screen pass to the tight end behind the line of scrimmage, cough, cough, Notre Dame. So, maybe we'll be seeing a little bit of that in this game.
Matt, I think your idea of starting just with the passing game, I think is really crucial. Yeah, we think of the Big Ten. We think of big boy football. We think you got to run the damn ball. But USC's power punch is its passing game, especially when you look at having Lemon and Lane as arguably 2 of the best receivers in the country. You got to take advantage of your weapons. So I think definitely that's not to say you don't utilize the run game. And I think Ethan makes a great point of Brian Jackson just being the guy to be the dude who just gets the ball into the end zone when you're inside the 5 to get the job done. I think that was really smart. I really like those plays where they had him run in 2 touchdowns there kind of in the end zone. I think one was even a Wildcat play, if I recall correctly. And so,
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a really smart play to use Jackson in that regard. But I think really you got to start with the run game then, or the pass game, pardon me, and really just utilize your top two receivers to make sure they're eating, make sure they're doing their jobs, and really, proving their test of manhood, especially on the road against a ranked team like you guys have been saying. But then also you do need to use the run game and mix it in there, especially with how good King Miller has been this year, especially just going on insane runs. So really it's, I think, got to go heavy on the pass, but definitely do mix some run in there for the offense.
All right, we're going to talk about the defense pretty soon, but we're going to round out the offensive side of the ball for USC in this game by talking about Elijah Page. So, been battling the injuries. We don't know if he's going to be playing this coming weekend, but the offensive line has held together well. And again, Zach Hanson, rock star, like the best story on this coaching staff this season. So, the backups have been able to do their part. They've been able to hold their own. But now, Oregon, biggest game of the season. How are you feeling in terms of this offensive line being able to hold it together if Elijah Page can't play? Ethan, then Crash.
Yeah, I'm still feeling pretty good. I think it's one of those situations where, like, until I see otherwise, like I'm feeling pretty confident. Like USC's had Jean-Ray Reed come in and play pretty well. They've had Kalon Miller come in and play pretty well. And when they move, Tobias Raymond to the left tackle and they put Miller in at left guard. And yeah, Micah Banuelos plays pretty well. Like they just have, there's so many players who have seen the field for USC at that position that have played well. So I'm pretty confident that, they'll put up a good fight. I think, if it doesn't go so well, because Oregon has a pretty tough defensive line and they have a pretty tough secondary. So they're going to make Maiava work to find the open man. So if he's, waiting a second extra and, guys are getting in the backfield because of that. I hope that we see Maiava, use his legs in this game a little bit more, especially a little bit more improvisationally, because that could make it to where, even if the offensive line doesn't have the best game ever, it's not necessarily a total disaster. Because, he's done pretty well when he's been entrusted to do that. So, and, that could be the formula to success, especially if, because I think like worst case scenario for Maiava in this game is like, it's feeling a lot like Nebraska. Like he's just not getting anything going, throwing the football. So, maybe making that pivot a little bit earlier and trying to use his legs a little more earlier on in the game would be good to see. So yeah, I think I'd definitely like to see him do that for sure.
Matt, I think when you talk about just Elijah Page, you have to talk about the whole offensive line in general, because yes, Page is down. And yes, he's been a crucial part of that O-line, arguably maybe the best lineman that USC has this year. But even still, like we've said, and it's a credit to Zach Hanson, the offensive line coach, for how he's managed to keep these guys gelling and make sure they're still playing well, even when one of them goes down. It's just like you just slot someone else in there. Maybe you move a couple pieces around, slot another guy in somewhere else. But for the most part, this line has held up pretty well. And I'm pretty confident, especially with how this line looked against Iowa, especially in that second half where they were just, really just allowing Maiava to have the time that he needed to make the plays he wanted to make. And obviously, too, I think, like you said, Ethan, Oregon has a great secondary. So Maiava will need that time. I'm not worried about that. But still, even in the event that he can't find open receivers and it's not really planned to be you hand it off to King Miller or Brian Jackson, I still would like to see Maiava use his legs. This is another game where having that other element of a rushing game would be very beneficial to USC. So I really do hope to see that as well, even if, regardless, especially if the O-line does give Maiava the time that he